Happy New Year. We're starting 2026 with some lazy slop content. The reason being that this is Mortal Kombat, therefore it will do pretty well, while the Fire Emblem video I'm making that I'm more passionate about is going to bomb. So I need to balance things out. So you're getting both these videos. Please watch the Fire Emblem video as well if you're interested. If not, then I'll cry. So the idea is, if Mortal 1 Kombat, I'm going to keep calling it that, stay mad, gets a direct sequel under the Netflix regime, and they don't like reboot everything or do a massive course correction and just sack off all the new stuff that they've come up with, this multiverse and the changes to the current timeline. If we do try to follow up on the game as presented, which characters are likely to show up in the next game? And this can be either main roster or cameo roster. It doesn't really matter, though I am mostly going to be thinking about it in terms of the main roster, because some of these are pretty obvious. So the tiers are guaranteed, good chance, average chance, not likely, and no chance in hell. Self-explanatory. So we'll start off with a few simple ones. Liu Kang created this timeline. He is the main character of the franchise. He is coming back. Raiden is his champion, the Mortal Raiden, so he's going to come back. Maybe he'll ascend to godhood or something, but he is definitely coming back. God Raiden, though, probably has costumes. They could do something a bit more with him. He isn't strictly necessary, but then again, they have been consistent with, at least in the main game stories, other timeline versions of Raiden still being God Raiden. Both Havoc and Shang Tsung's versions are that. And the allied one that is summoned is just the ones where they were not limited by character models and could draw whatever they wanted. In Invasions, where they just decided every Raiden has to be the Mortal one. I don't know why they were like that, but yeah. So I think he's got a good chance, at least as a costume, or a cutscene character, or maybe as a cameo. I'm still surprised they never made God Raiden as a cameo with his more classic moves. Johnny Cage is of course going to come back. He is the best character they currently have, one of the most popular by far, and also, you know, with the new movie coming out with him as the main character, it just makes sense to try and get in on that, and maybe try and get Karl Urban to do a movie skin or something. You know, it makes sense to bring Johnny back. He's the guy. Sonya, of course, is also going to come back. Her absence was definitely felt by the fans, even though she was in the game as a cameo. We have been somewhat hinting towards introducing her. You know, Johnny's like, come on, Geras, at least tell me if my wife was hot. And the introduction of Jax. Sonya and Jax are basically guaranteed to be coming back. These are mainstays of the franchise. They rarely miss a game. Even if they do, they usually have some kind of role in the story. Even then, yeah, I think those two are guaranteed to come back on the main roster. We'll be introduced to what they are like here, and we'll probably get a new origin for Jax's arms, because that's all they do. Or they'll try and be clever about it and go, well, now Jax is going to be a leg guy. He's going to lose his legs and he'll be like a cyber leg dude and he'll just kick people, and then maybe just get the gauntlets that Jackie had, something like that. In a similar vein to them, Countess Jade. She's mentioned a lot, but she's not in the game. You know what Edenia stands are like? You know, the ones who go gaga over the Edenia characters? They were not happy that Jade was absent, and she was one of the most commonly wished for characters and teased characters for alleged leaks of future combat packs. So there's basically a guarantee that Jade is coming back. What this new form will be, who knows, but she's going to be there. Similarly to guaranteed Edenians, Kitana and Mileena, also mainstays of the franchise, but Mileena also has an in by being the Empress of Outworld, so she has to be here unless you find some explanation for why she's just arbitrarily not around. You know, Mileena stands are psychotic, so they would cry if she was left off the main roster and reserved for DLC or something. And Kitana is Kitana. She is the second lady of MK. She was technically the first because she was designed first. That is setting up something with her and Raiden, and Johnny was flirting with her. Of course, one of the most interesting narratives they could follow that they've not done anything with, because Kitana was so pushed back, I guess because she was so big in MK11, they wanted to give Mileena the spotlight this time. Liu Kang and Kitana's relationship is nothing. Like, they know each other. He's friends with her mother and father, and he's trying to maintain that relationship with her sister, but Kitana and Liu Kang don't have anything in this timeline, whereas in other timelines they were very, very close. And I think exploring that, how Liu Kang views this Kitana, you know, his feelings don't seem to have actually died down at all over these millennia since he restarted the timeline, as seen when he meets the other Kitana and they kiss right away. Plus the fact that she was his first choice, not Raiden, not Kung Lao, Kitana. Yeah, it'll be interesting to explore that if they do. I don't know if they will, but they absolutely should. Sindel, however, has got no chance of coming back. She was the one character from the current main timeline to die in the game. And it'd be weird to bring her back so soon. I could see her having a cameo, an Ermac ending or something like that. Updating that, yeah, she's still in there with Jared. They're still trying to fight for control of Ermac. Maybe they'll need to get another ally to die and join them in there. Yeah, Sindel is out for a while, which is fine. I mean, she's one of my favourite characters, but I'm fine with her sitting out a few games. This is the thing, is I'm fine with my favourite characters sitting out a game or two, unless it's Johnny Cage, because he is just brings so much joy to the general scenes and makes a lot of this stuff less of a slog. But come on, guys, even if it's your favourite, let him sit one game out or two. You know, just be reasonable. Don't say this character has to make it in every time, and therefore other characters don't get to. I suppose now's a good time to address the Lin Kuei situation. Oh, that's a tricky one. Smoke, I feel, is probably not too likely. We had an entire expansion about the Lin Kuei and Shiryu characters. Smoke had one appearance in that entire thing. I don't think he was even in the final battle. He might have been, but off the top of my head, I can't recall. He wasn't part of the mission. There was no prominent enemy Smoke at all. I don't think there even was a Chaos Smoke. Was there? I don't recall one. That was a chance to give him a story chapter. But no, Tanya and Rain got them. Smoke got nothing. So, yeah, I think he's going to be off. They'll probably say he's off training Hanzo and or protecting Harumi while the Lin Kuei are here. You know, there's a proper war and they've gone into hiding. Smoke has been entrusted to look after Kuai Liang's wife while Kuai Liang himself is dealing with this conflict. But that's the thing. So we're definitely going to get Scorpion. I think it would be absurd to believe otherwise that we are not going to get Kuai Liang Scorpion coming back. I think Hanzo is going to come back through multiverse stuff or time travel, depending on how they want to go about that. But he'll be there as a costume and he will be a variant that will show up. And whether he's relevant or if he's just there to be an enemy Scorpion, because people reacted so negatively to the Kuai Liang Scorpion change and were so adamant about having Hanzo Scorpion back, I think that he's going to get some kind of opportunity. I'm kind of surprised they didn't just give him one in Chaos Reigns. Oh, here's an alternate timeline Hanzo. You know, there's so many ways Chaos Reigns could have been done a lot better than it was. But the big question comes down to Sub-Zero. It was interesting, the idea of Kuai Liang is Scorpion, so Bi-Han has to stay Sub-Zero. But that then raised the question of Noob Saibot. And they could have had Noob Saibot just be from an alternate timeline and let Bi-Han stay Sub-Zero. Or have him get cured of being Noob Saibot at the end of the expansion. And the expansion is basically just a pointless excuse to have Bi-Han become Noob Saibot so he can make it onto the roster. You know, again, you don't need to justify that. But he's stuck as Noob Saibot, and so the question is, are they going to undo this change and have him be Sub-Zero again, and then need some other way to explain Noob Saibot? Because Noob Saibot is a very popular character for gameplay reasons, and I don't think anyone really cares about him story-wise, but people really like the way he plays. So people will want him on the roster either way. Will he still be Bi-Han, or will they pull some bullshit with time travel or alternate timelines? You could have an alternate Bi-Han show up, maybe a good version. Or will they let him stay Noob Saibot and then have Kuai Liang Sub-Zero or another Sub-Zero from another timeline show? Because this was the issue that they had with MKX. MK9, both Sub-Zeros would transform. We had Noob Saibot and Cyber Sub-Zero. So when the next game rolls around, we need a classic Sub-Zero because MK fans will spit their dummies out and cry if we don't have all these specific characters in their classic forms. Sub-Zero had to be restored to human, even though it made no sense narratively, and it's only explained if you find this ultra specific pre-fight intro between a particular Sub-Zero costume and a character who never even met Sub-Zero. It was very bad. Do you think that they are going to, A, have Bi-Han become Sub-Zero again and need a new excuse for Noob Saibot? B, have Bi-Han remain Noob Saibot and bring in an alternate Bi-Han? C, have Bi-Han remain Noob Saibot and bring in an alternate Kuai Liang? Or D, have Bi-Han remain Noob Saibot and introduce a brand new Sub-Zero that we'd never seen before? It won't be a woman, because not only is that Frost thing, there was a lot of criticism of the gender swap replacement stuff in this game, so I think having a girl Sub-Zero successor, not going to happen. I could see Frost being introduced either way, but she can't replace Sub-Zero in the eyes of the fans. So these all have a good chance. Bi-Han Sub-Zero, Kuai Liang Sub-Zero, and Noob Saibot. It's just there's so many ways they can do this and they have to pick one, but I don't think anyone is far more likely than the others, so it's difficult to say. Now, some characters in M1K, their arcade endings are done in such a way where you can imagine that's just them writing this character out for a while. Like, I've really got that impression with Geras. His ending is basically them saying his story in the current timeline. He's basically just leaving it to go and observe the other timelines. He might get a cameo and go, hey, Liu Kang, this thing is happening, be ready. But I don't foresee him actually making it onto the playable roster. A cameo is a possibility, though, because, you know, Geras has some of the most unique abilities in the series. I'm not just talking about the thrust, and it would be a shame to lose access to all that. It's one of the reasons why I thought Kronika would have been a really good cameo character. They really should have done that. Cybersmoke, I don't think there's any reason to have him. Maybe as a costume or something, but Cybersmoke, even in M1K, with all the opportunities to have different cyber versions of Smoke, they just had it as this one particular opponent you can fight in Chapter 15, and that's it. One of the few non-fusions of that chapter. That's really it. I don't think Cybersmoke is going to come back in any substantial capacity for a while. Because again, I don't think Smoke's going to get much of anything to do himself. Li Mei is one of those characters I think has an average chance because, you know, she got a higher profile now through the latest game, but her arc was complete. Her whole thing was that she failed in her duty, and now she got a chance to redeem herself by helping to make sure that Sindel did not join her husband in death. Well, initially. Again, she could show up in a story cutscene, but I think actually making it onto the roster is not too likely. I think she's one of those who's probably going to be sitting out a game or two, as per usual, but she has a higher chance of coming back sooner than like 5 games later, you know? Nitara, I think, is not likely at all. Partly because she didn't really do anything in the story. There wasn't really much set up with her. Also, the fact that she's one of those characters where if she makes it in, they're probably not going to put Scarlet in because there'd be so much overlap in what they do with the blood magic stuff. And people really like Scarlet in 11, and I think it's way more likely that Scarlet's going to come back instead, and Nitara's going to sit a game out, if not 2. Plus the fact that the entire character of Nitara has been tarnished by the horrendous voice betrayal. Unfortunately, it was just atrocious. And, you know, Sonya has the advantage of some decent stuff being done with her story-wise, or at least, well, some relevant stuff. She had a substantial role in MK11. With Nitara, though, there's nothing there for this character, and not much of a history as well prior to that people could go, well, I still like what the character is outside of this stuff. Sonya has a lot, so people can still go, I still like Sonya even with that bad betrayal. You can debate until the cows come home which of the 2 actors did a worse job, whether it was Megan Fox or Ronda Rousey, whatever, you know. Scarlet is more likely to come back. I think she actually has a good chance because she can fill in that niche that Nitara would fill that she's not going to do anymore. Other than the jumping around, someone else will have to do that. But she can do all the stuff Nitara would do, and people like her enough to want her to come back. So, yeah, I think she actually got a good chance. Whereas Nitara, nah. Great Kung Lao, just get it out of the way. I still say that anyone who thought the new era was going to kick off with a Great Kung Lao game does not understand how this franchise works, because the franchise would never take a risk like that, because it would mean Scorpion, Sub-Zero. You could have a predecessor, but it's not them. And we've seen now that when it's Scorpion, but it's not Hanzo, people don't like it. So you wouldn't have Scorpion, you wouldn't have any of the Sub-Zeros we recognize, you wouldn't have any of the Earthrealm characters. It would just not go over well. So it's best left to, at most, a spin-off or a story mode chapter. It's been a while since Goro has actually been properly in the game. It's been, you know, over a decade. That was MKX. Then he was just dead for the next game, off-screen, and then he was a cameo. But Goro is one of those iconic characters that I think has a good chance of coming back and making it onto the main roster. It's just a question of whether he would make it in over Shiva and Kintaro. Over Kintaro, yeah, I think Kintaro's not too likely. If Goro or Shiva make it onto the main roster, he could be a cameo. I think Shiva has an average chance. Goro is the more iconic of the 2, but I don't see them putting both on the roster. I mean, we haven't had multiple Shokans on a roster since MK9, and only one was playable then. The other 2 were NPCs. The last time we could actually play as more than one Shokan in a game was Armageddon, which, as of the turnover to the new year, will be 20 years ago. So, yeah, let's not kid ourselves. The Shokan are really undervalued in the franchise. It's not happening. Quan Chi, I think, has a decent chance. I feel like his ending sets up an excuse for him to not be around. He's off doing his research. He was really had a much smaller role this time than you would expect, given how big his roles were in 9 and X. But I guess it was to make room for Shang Tsung, who is, of course, basically guaranteed. I don't think he'll be the main villain this time. I think we're just going to have, here's the main Shang Tsung. He's doing his own thing, probably setting up the tournament. I could see him being left out until an expansion, and the expansion is the tournament. but I don't think that he's going to have a substantial role. He'll just be here because people love Shang Tsung now. Ever since Karitagawa returned for Aftermath, people have loved the character, and Alan Lee did a great job kind of continuing that take on the character. But, while they just really disrespected him in MK9 and then just axed him entirely from the roster of MKX, I think that Shang Tsung is going to be a mainstay from this point on. Quan Chi, not as likely, because again, there's a lot of overlap with these two, and Quan Chi has an excuse to not be around. You can argue Shang Tsung is more of an excuse. I think Quan Chi will depend somewhat on what the threat is. Like, if Shinnok comes back, he's pretty much guaranteed, because it's a Netherrealm thing. Shinnok, I think, actually has a pretty good chance, because again, he's been absent since MKX, and I know it's just 2 games without the character, right? Which isn't that much, but it is still a decade, and yes, he was the main villain, ultimately, of Onslaught. Do consider that most people didn't play Onslaught, and that's one of the reasons why it died. So, but I think he has a pretty good shot, especially because there's so much fertile ground with the idea of the new Shinnok. That's an advantage that a lot of the characters who weren't in 1 get. We hear snippets. Oh, Countess Jade, she's friends with Katana or what have you, but not much is known about them, and so there's a lot of opportunity for reinvention. Now, I'm sure they're going to play it a lot safer this time with these characters because, Scorpion, some of these changes, people didn't like a lot of the changes, so I think they'll play it safe, and they'll be close to what we expect, but there's still new ideas. I mean, Shinnok needs a whole new backstory, because he's presumably not an Elder God anymore. Who and what is he? Where is he? What's he been doing? I'm sure we'll see something with Shinnok in the next game, and there's a pretty good chance he'll make it back to the roster. Shao, of course, is just an iconic villain, although he has been downgraded. It depends on what they want to follow up on. I'd say guaranteed, because I suspect that the intention was that because they mentioned it in Chaos Reigns, General Shao's rebellion is still going on. Many endings were about that rebellion and the prison break and all that stuff. And I'm sure that the plan was that the second expansion would have been about the Outworld cast. That's why their role was so small. We've done the Earthrealm expansion, now for the Outworld expansion, and Shao gets a big role in that. Whether he's the main villain, or we focus on someone else, who knows? But I'm sure that was the idea. And so I can easily see the writers wanted to take some of those ideas that I'm sure they already had cooked up and go, we're going to put this in the next game as a B-plot or something like that. Or maybe even rework whatever plans they may have had for the next game to center more on that. Because I think Shao would have had a good chance, but because of that stuff that was clearly being set up, they didn't do anything with in the end. I think he's guaranteed to come back. Reiko, not likely. I could imagine them being like, oh yeah, he tamed Onaga and died in the process, or was severely wounded in the process. Maybe he weakened Onaga, so Shao could come in and take him down, and now Onaga works for Shao. Because Reiko has so little going for him normally, and then in 1 he has even less. He is a nothing character, he's just Shao's lackey, so I think he's not got a chance of coming back. Onaga, though, I think has a good chance. Because not only is this a character that fans have wanted to come back for years, when people looked at, oh, what could MK11 be about? We've adapted these stories, probably going to skip Deadly Alliance, Deception will be the next one, let's do Onaga. And the latest game has a lot of references to Deception, and so all people expected Onaga might come into it, but he didn't. All we got was the tease. Yeah, I think he's going to come back in some form. Cameo is almost guaranteed at the very least, but it'd be nice to see him actually on the roster. I think the series has kind of started to shy away from like big boss monsters for a while. They tend to be more human-sized now. I think the last proper big monster boss actually was Blaze in Armageddon. Maybe Dark Khan, depends on how you look at it. Anyway, I think Onaga's got a really good chance of coming back, and we'll see where that goes. Fujin, technically, yes, I think he's got a very good chance. I say technically because there's all these references to Raiden having a sister in the intros, and oh, she's gonna undergo the training to become a Shaolin monk, and we know nothing about her. I imagine the idea was they'll say Raiden has a sister. From there, they'll gauge fan interest and responses and go, okay, fans think the idea of Fujin as a woman is interesting. Because he already kind of set up that Fujin had multiple lives, and some of them may have been female in MK11 in his ending. I could see them being like, well, we're going to gender swap him. Or now they might go, well, fans really don't like a lot of the gender swap stuff. Let's just have Fujin be the wind god. Raiden's sister is just something completely unrelated. Or maybe his sister is Cetrion. I could see that being another thing where they're thinking, how will fans respond to this? Pick one based on that. The complete absence of the Elder Gods is an interesting thing. They do exist. Liu Kang talks about it, but do they outrank him? Do they know that he created the universe and that he's allowing himself to be outranked by them? We don't know. I think Cetrion has pretty good chance of coming back. Plus, you know, she's one of the villains who there was good in her, unlike Geras, but Geras was reconstructed to be a good person. There's more rationale to bring Cetrion back than Geras for Liu Kang, and I could see them bringing her back as either the mouthpiece for the Elder Gods again, or as Raiden's sister. Maybe Fujin will be the mouthpiece for the Elder Gods. Maybe he's just an Elder God to replace Cetrion. That would be interesting. Liu Kang's like, I need an Elder God who will actually do stuff when needed. Fujin was reliable. He went along with my plan, even though he knew everyone was going to die if he did. I could see him being like, yeah, Fujin, you're reliable. You're an Elder God now. Cetrion, we'll see with you. Downgrade to Raiden's sister. I think that's probably how they're going to go about it. Rain, once again, I think there is a good reason to leave him out. He's not one of those staple characters, even if they do keep bringing him back in various ways across the Netherrealm era of the franchise. You know, DLC, then story character, and then DLC again. I think that they'll probably let him sit this one out, because we just got a big role for Emperor Rain, and the main Rain, his ending has an excuse for him to be in prison, so he's probably going to be gone for a while. Do I think Hydro is going to take his place? Honestly, I don't think Hydro is going to become a proper character anytime soon. I think it'll probably happen eventually. I've detailed this in a few videos, how it's been escalating bit by bit, adaptations and fan works, and then eventually they referenced him in a normal game. But like, I don't see them actually bringing Hydro in anytime soon. Now, here's a tricky one. They don't have the female versions here, but Sector and Cyrax. Now, for story reasons, Sector is guaranteed to come back. Cyrax, I could see her being with Smoke. It'd be a bit weird to leave her out after she's just had such a big role, but then you could argue the big role is the reason why you leave her out. People have wanted these characters back for so long, and Triborg wasn't good enough. When they got brought back and they were female, I think Sector is guaranteed because of the story thing where she's with Bihan. Cyrax, I would say, has a good chance, but I'm wondering about the gender. I don't think many people at all responded well to the gender swap. You know, you get controversies like the Twindell thing. A lot of people defended that decision. A lot of people really liked it. You know, there's some people, I'm sure, who liked Kuai Liang as Scorpion or were indifferent, whereas here I've never heard a single person talk about the gender swap of Sector and Cyrax and actually agree with the decision to do it. I could easily see them being like, well, we can't just swap it back, and we can't have, what we're going to do, have both genders running around. Or they'll go, well, Sector has gone so crazy in the whole transhumanism stuff that she has effectively transcended humanity and the concept of gender entirely, and is now like a genderless robot in a bid to try and appease classic fans of the character and also not completely throw out anyone who might potentially like the new version. Maybe the voice will be done with some kind of synthesizer. Maybe they'll do both genders. Maybe they'll keep the current actress as well as a male actor and have them like combine their voices together. But I think Sector is guaranteed to come back. Cyrax, not as guaranteed. Kung Lao, yeah, he's guaranteed to come back. He's one of the staples at this point. He's Raiden's best friend. It just makes sense that these two characters would be brought back together. What they do with Kung Lao remains to be seen. If Raiden's sister is brought in, I'm sure she and Kung Lao will have a very strong dynamic. Whether that's like a romantic thing or just those two are friends. Maybe those two have more similar personalities than either has to Raiden and they tease him a bunch. I think that's likely, but Kung Lao is guaranteed to come back. Kenshi has gotten very popular. He was in high demand for MK9, clearly, and he made it in. He was in high demand for 11, if I recall correctly. And then he showed up in 1 as one of the earliest announced characters, and he's a very prominent character now. Just good chance. I don't think he's guaranteed, actually, because you have the 4 champions, then you're going to have Sonya and Jax, you're going to have the Edenians and the Shiraidu and these villains and whatnot. At a certain point, you have to look at some characters and go, who is acceptable to cut? And out of the 4 champions, I don't think many people would disagree that Kenshi is the one who is most likely going to get cut of the 4, and is the one that is the most acceptable to do so. Partly because he's not one of the iconic originals from the early 3 games, and also because he's just not as impactful overall, and you can easily justify an excuse for him to not be here, and fans would go, yeah, that's fine for a game. You know, he's probably going to be off doing his war with the Yakuza, what have you, probably bringing Takeda with him. But the thing about Takeda is it's really interesting. They gave him a whole new backstory to explain why he's here. He's Kenshi's cousin. There's no time travel or anything. He is Kenshi's cousin, okay? And what he's done with him in the expansion about his ninja clan. Nothing. He's not there. He's not mentioned. The only actual story presence of Takeda in all of M1K is the Chaos Realm version, who is still Kenshi's son. Who knows at this point? Actually, you know what? I think his chances are average. I don't think he's actually got a particularly great chance. I think that Kung Jin has a really good chance of making it in. the one Kombat kid to not come back yet, you know, and there was a design done for him that wasn't just the evil yellow Shang Tsung one. Clearly, they had plans to bring this character back in some form, playable or cameo, and he's the one who hasn't come back yet. Plus, he has the easiest way to bring him back. He's not the child of an existing character, he's the cousin. I know they keep changing it to like nephew or whatever, but he can just be Kung Lao's cousin and just be here. And it's like, yeah, he's one of the new initiates. He's way more likely than Jackie. I don't think Jackie has any chance of coming back. Cameo at best, but I think like Cassie has a higher chance of that. I feel like if you're going to bring back one of them, it would be her. Because the Kombat kids have kind of slipped into that position of they alternate the same way that Baraka and Reptile used to, or that Scarlet and Nitara will. And if they introduce Hydro, then he/she and Rain would. It's characters who occupy similar ideas. When you leave one out, the other one gets to come back, and so on. Jin's not been around, so he gets to come back. Takeda, people really like him, so it's not a zero chance possibility. Cassie and Jackie would need some reworking to be brought in, but outside of, you know, bringing in other timeline. Anyway, yeah, these two, not too likely. And Jackie is shit, so who cares? So now we have the iconic jobber trinity of Kano, Reptile, and Baraka. For a time, these two were alternating. It was nice to see them both together again. I personally think that Baraka has an average chance of coming back. I think he's going to be just working as a representative of his people to Melina in the background, maybe as a cameo, but I don't see him making main roster. Reptile, I think, has a really good shot of coming back because he's slightly more iconic. Also, the more classic ninjas you have, the easier it is to sell the same character model as the different costumes when you do the classic ninjas. So, yeah. Although, if they want to make use of the new movie costumes, Reptile can't do that as far as we know because he's presumably going to stay dead, whereas Baraka is in the movie, so you could use that. But I still think this is the order. And then Kano, I think he's just going to get a free ride as per usual. What are you going to do, introduce Sonya without Kano? Not too likely. And there are some intros that reference the Black Dragon, setting them up, so I think Kano's got a really good chance of coming back. Just to see what he's like in this timeline. Will he have two cyber eyes, or will they do anything different with him? I mean, Kuai Liang got his scar again as Scorpion, and it's still over the same eye. Not over the left one. Like, they couldn't do anything different with that, so... Kotal was referenced in the story, and he's relatively popular, and then, you know, you're going to bring in Countess Jade, you probably Count Kotal or something, to keep the instead of General Kotal like he was in Onslaught. But he's not guaranteed, because he's not super popular. I think he's one of those characters that gets by more on his archetype, because he tends to be a bit more of a grappler compared to a lot of other characters, so I think he would get in for that. If he does, he and Jade will probably still have a thing, whether that's anything that already exists or they'll do an origin for it, because we never had an origin for it. It's just, yeah, that's already a thing. So it'd be nice to have some version where we get to see the beginnings of that relationship. I think that the Orderrealm cast have a really good chance of making it in. If you do Orderrealm, you have to have Havoc there. We just had the whole thing with the Chaos Reigns, but maybe that's why they left him out, so they could save main Havoc to have a big role in this Orderrealm narrative that will likely be a B-plot in the next game. Darius and Hotaru would be in there for sure. It just remains to be seen how much of a role they would have and whether they would make it onto the main roster. It was really weird that these three didn't show up in Chaos Reigns at all. Like, you really couldn't do Hotaru as a cameo and then have him be one of Havoc's minions or one of the people being fought and killed in the arena. You couldn't even do that. Come on. As for Serena, Kia, Jataka, I think Serena's actually got a really solid shot of coming back on the playable roster. Kia and Jataka purely as cameos. Like, if Serena makes the main roster, they could come in as cameos or story. Actually, I put them in as not likely, because that's the only way they're going to get in, because Serena is the representative of this trio. She's the only one who's ever been playable in any form. We've never been able to use these in any other way, not even as cameos. And so I think a cameo system is the only way they're going to come back, and only if Serena's on the base roster. It'd be weird to have Kia and Jataka without Serena, so I think that's the way they're going to go with this. If Quan Chi gets a big role, he's gone back to the sisterhood and he's doing his thing, he'll probably rename it to a brotherhood because he's a controlling freak, and that'll be one of those things that's going back to the way it used to be, but it makes sense for the character. Anyway, Triborg, there's no reason for Triborg to exist if we have Sector and or Cyrax, although I could see that be a thing that's teased, that Sector's like, I'm working on this new project, the Triborg project, and then maybe Sector dies, gets swapped into that body. Maybe that's how they'll do it. Maybe Sector will just be Triborg. Like, her mind will go into that body, and that body will have, like, a male voice or something. Who knows? I mean, they could do something interesting with that. The idea of a woman in this male, technically robotic body, and then how that fucks with her head, having this sudden change. If Takeda's ending his canon, we've already seen the death of Movado. I don't think he's likely to show up. I mean, technically, he dies twice in this game, and he's not even on the roster. We see a version at the Chaos Team get killed as well. He's just not that popular. Suhao has a bit of like a kind of counterculture popularity growing, because with so many people being like, oh, Suhao is this terrible character, he's terrible, he's shit. It's like, I've compared it before, Scrappy Doo. So many people hate him just because he's unpopular, and a lot of other people like, I'm going to be contrarian, but still not too likely, because these still remain two of the least popular characters in the franchise. One of the few characters who can compete with them in terms of low popularity is Kronika, who I think has an average shot of coming back, because they already said Kronika doesn't exist after she dies, but other timelines exist. So it's not unreasonable if people who weren't even at the final battle can show up and kill Kronika in some variant timeline, for the bad ending for MK11 where she decapitates Liu Kang to occur in another timeline. And Kronika would be the obvious villain to bring in to kind of get rid of the multiverse if they want to do that. If they want to do a Crisis on Infinite Earths, a winning Kronika could do that with this weird new balanced timeline that she has, and she's trying to merge all the timelines back into one because it's all unbalanced now. Like, even having her perfect timeline is not enough for her because the other ones exist and she can't accept that. Either in this next game or the one after that, I reckon she's going to be the villain. Or a villain. Maybe she'll have someone else that she brings in and they'll like overthrow her or something. You know, like she's created a new Geras-like character. Maybe this will be when they finally run out of ideas and just have the one being as the villain. Because in theory, there's a timeline that just ended because it became the one being. Maybe that's where Kronika's timeline ultimately ends. The one being revives and perhaps merges with her or some stupid bullshit. Dramin, Blaze, Moloch, I see them as having an okay chance as cameos, but overall not too likely. Like, if they want to have a cameo that's different, I mean, I'm sure Motaro isn't coming back. But I can imagine they'll still go, well, we want to have some kind of monster cameo, because we can do that. We can bring back characters we couldn't normally, or that'd be too difficult to do with the way this stuff is done now. We could have this character come back, and a monster is a good option. Dramin, no one really cares about Dramin. Same with Meat, honestly. But I think Blaze and Moloch have a decent shot of coming back as cameos if they want to do the monster cameo route. Same with Tor. Ferret and Tor are probably not going to come back for a time. I think they're going to miss at least one more game before they even come back as a cameo. I would say Aaron Black's got a decent shot of coming back, and I'm pretty sure people generally like him. And if they're going to bring back Kano, he's probably going to be part of the Black Dragon as well. Although I'd love it if they would just go with that original backstory as this guy who was just in Outworld, but now he's more of like maybe a bounty hunter rather than a lawman. Or maybe he's like a Clint Eastwood character in his Western films, where he just kind of wanders into town, does some stuff, and leaves. And maybe have like a slightly more heroic errand. But maybe he's a guy who's like, yeah, I've helped you. Now give me money. You could take the idea of these spaghetti western archetypes and put them into MK, and I think it could work really well. And it could even be like Melina tries to recruit him and he's like, no, I'm not interested in serving the throne. Eren could actually be one of the cooler characters if they bring him into the next game, actually, weirdly enough. They've teased Dagon, but again, it's one of those cases where it's not a particularly popular character. The way they depict him is very classic. They haven't come up with a new concept for him. He's just leading the Red Dragon again. Might not even be canon, but they have teased that he could come back. So if they do bring Takeda back, there's a good chance they'll do that. Unless they just say, oh yeah, the Red Dragon got dealt with off screen. And like maybe one Red Dragon will have bled over to join the Black Dragon or something like that. I mean, that could have been an interesting direction to go with the Black Dragon, is instead of being, oh yeah, Takeda's maybe going to get help from the Black Dragon to fight the Red. Make it that Takeda wipes out the Red, but there are some who survive and go on to form the Black Dragon. Like, that's where Kano's origin comes in. So now he has a completely different beef with Takeda rather than just being the guy who shows up to get his ass kicked at the end of Sonya's chapter every time. Devora, she's a popular character. Good chance of her coming back. Remains to be seen how she works. Maybe they'll make her a bit more sympathetic. She's like this person doing her best for her people. Or maybe she'll just stay the grotesque bug monster. Maybe they'll go even further. I like the way they did make her more of a gross bug person in 11 compared to 1, where she's just kind of this sexy yellow woman. And that was kind of it. You know, but then they like really go all in on this stuff with the angular face and that. And I'd like to see them take that even further and see what grotesqueries they can come up with. As long as she doesn't kill more main characters, just don't let her do that. They have set up Shujinko. I don't know how likely he is to come back, but they have set something up. But that's just a young Shujinko who just arbitrarily has those powers. It is one of those things where you could argue the fact that they had it that his arc has already happened and then been undone through Kung Lao's ending maybe means that they have no plans for this character. It's just there, just as an idea they threw out there, because it would be really dumb for him to go through this stuff twice, you know? Shujinko, and he shows up and it's like, oh yeah, if you didn't get Kung Lao's arcade ending, you have no idea what they're talking about when they say, yeah, he was Kung Lao's apprentice who got his mind wiped. Let's use it to set him up as a villain, maybe working with Shang Tsung. Yet another deadly alliance. Dairu, I feel, has no chance. Not only is he a not popular character, he's one of those characters that is not considered much. He never really had a firm place in the Order Realm, Chaos Realm stuff, because in Deception you have Havoc for Chaos Realm, Hotaru representing the regime of Order Realm, and Darius was the guy leading the resistance against that. Dairu he had potential with his former association with Hotaru, because he used to be a Seidan guardsman, but not anymore, now he's a mercenary. That is hired by Darius. So now he's on opposite sides. But if we're going to go all in on representing this conflict, yes, I could see them doing something like that. Although, is Order Realm in the place to have that kind of storyline right now? Probably not. And also, with that pre-fight intro where Havoc is referred to as Dairu, it's like, how did you know my real name? I don't think he's likely to be coming back as a separate character. I think he's just been merged with Havoc as part of this current timeline. It's dumb. I hate it, but it is how it is. Tanya, I personally foresee not necessarily coming back. I mean, I know fans would get pissy if one of the few specific LGBT characters got left out. She had a pretty big role in the main story, and then got an even bigger one, the other version, in Chaos Reigns. And she has that important role as Melina's bodyguard, but I could see her being more of like a cameo / story character rather than being an actual playable character. Maybe having her place in the Umgadi replaced by like female chameleon. I can actually see them doing more. Wait, not that high. I can see them doing more with female chameleon compared to Tanya, because they brought her in as a cameo, they gave her that role in the story, they gave her a bigger role in the expansion, and then you go to Invasions and Reptiles season, he wasn't even the titan of that timeline, he was just a random Saurian who works for female chameleon, who was the queen of the Saurians. So they keep giving us these little bits with Chameleon, who has been seriously ignored for over a decade, but now she's getting all this coverage in this game. So I could see them taking her, putting her in the main roster, and Tanya being a cameo, or maybe like a fightable NPC who just uses Jade's staff moveset, and that's it. That's assuming that Jade even still has her staff. I could. It's possible they'll just take that away from her. Tanya's iconic weapon has been changed, so who knows? Male Chameleon, I don't see that happening. They don't really reference him at all. I guess because female chameleon had that place as she could be Reptile's mate and thus could save the Saurians. So she always had a bit more prominence, even though she was actually in less versions of the various games than male chameleon was. She was in one version of Trilogy, not the one they preserved by the way, and she was in the later Wii port of Armageddon, whereas male chameleon is just more consistent there. But they don't really talk about him that much. They don't reference him in any substantial way. I think there's like one intro, like a mirror match intro that Reptile had in MKX, and that's it. I think that's all they've done. So, plus they've got Floyd now. I don't think Floyd's going to become a canon character, but I feel like Chameleon's place in the MK pantheon has been replaced by Floyd, so I don't think he's coming back. Mocap, he was just a joke character. Like, you could have fun with a cameo, especially if you could actually get Carlos Piscina to come in and do the likeness. And I can maybe see him like appearing in the background of one of Johnny's movies doing some mocap. That could be a fun little cameo. Maybe do mocap for like a Raiden scene or something. But I don't think that he's going to come back in any substantial way. They reference Master Kai in a few intros. I think he has a decent shot of coming back in some brand new role. Liu Kang made him a Shaolin master. Jarek, outside of a cameo, no. He's really only notable for his ending in MK4, and that's kind of it. No one really cares about Jarek, unfortunately. Bo' Rai Cho is difficult to say, because is Madame Bo actually Bo' Rai Cho, or is it just like a similar role, then he's going to be out there somewhere in Outworld doing his own thing? I don't know. I personally prefer the idea of Madame Bo being his wife, but she had a different partner as Sector's mother, so yeah, I think he's unlikely to come back. Madame Bo is just kind of a less gross version of him, because she doesn't puke everywhere. She's a bit more respectable because her whole thing is tea rather than alcohol. But I'm sure he'll come back eventually, just not in this game. Kieran Cobra, I just don't see them coming back in this game or anytime soon. Even with Introduce the Black Dragon, unless they did like a big thing where here's the Black Dragon as the big thing. I think these two are just kind of bottom tier Black Dragon. Like even you have Kano and Cabal and I guess Eren at the top, and then you have characters like Tremor and whatnot. The odd other one that people recognise and remember fondly, Kieran Cobra, not really, because they didn't really have much of their own characters. They're mostly just taking gimmicks from Kano and Sonya. So unfortunately, I don't think they're ever coming back outside of maybe a cutscene appearance. Taven, I think, is actually unlikely, because Dagon has this larger role within the MK universe as the founder of the Red Dragon. So if you bring back the Red Dragon, you have an easy place to slot him in. Taven, not so much. And without the potential threat of Armageddon, I don't know where Taven would belong. I mean, maybe he could be one of the Elder Gods in the current timeline. That would be neat. him and Fujin like heading up this better version of them that's maybe dealing with something bigger a lot of the time. Collector, not really. I don't think people really took to Collector. I think he'll just stick as like a cameo as a shopkeeper in whatever side mode they have in the next one. That's kind of become his niche now. The Crypt and Invasions both did that. Frost has a decent shot of making it in now, I think, because of the aforementioned absence of a normal Sub-Zero. Not necessarily to be the new Sub-Zero, although it would be really funny if they were like, well, we don't have a normal Sub-Zero, Kuai Liang Scorpion, Bi-Han Noob Saibot. Frost is the Sub-Zero equivalent in the game, and the classic style Sub-Zero can be the pre-order character or one of the DLCs or something, maybe a setup for an expansion, who knows. Cole Young, I could see him making it in. I'm surprised he never made it in as like at least a cameo or something. I think he has a decent shot of making it in as a cameo. Well, I'll put him down to not likely because of how little we've seen of him in the trailer, so a lot of people reckon he's just going to be killed off fairly early, like within the first 30-40 minutes of the new film, to show that Shokan means business, or Sindel means business, and someone's going to kill Cole Young, and that's going to be it. He's going to have like no future relevance. And if that happens, then he's never going to make it into the games. Unless he survives to the end of this film, he's never going to make it into anything from the games, and it's up to you whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I will say that Striker is not too likely. I could see him being Sonya's partner in the Special Forces, actually now Jax's FBI, if Sonya is still Special Forces. He's one of those characters who doesn't have a particularly unique role, and his weapon set is just guns. And it's like, I feel like most people would say, well, if you're going to have a guy whose thing is guns, the cowboy with the revolvers... Fucking hell. The cowboy with the revolvers and the cool moves is going to be way more interested than blah. Ashra, I don't know why it took so long to address Ashra. People really like Ashra now, I think, because of this latest game, and also a cage match where she got a big role there. But she's one of those characters where I feel like her role has mostly been done. I'd say down here. I actually think Serene's probably got a higher chance of coming back. Ashra may be reserved for DLC or something. She's just going to be hanging out at the Wuxi Academy for a while, maybe with Serena. It kind of depends on what the Outworld plot is, I guess. But she's not like unlikely like she would have been for the last couple of games. I think people have warmed up to her a lot over the last 5 years or so through her appearances. So, okay chance of making it in, but what else do you really do with her? I could see them leaving her out until they delve into the Vaterna stuff, so they can actually do stuff with Zatusha again, and that would require Natara, or a new vampire. I guess they could introduce a new Vaternian. Maybe that's what Scarlet will be. Maybe she'll be a Vaternian, and that's how they'll rope Ashra into the plot again. Ermac is always a popular character, good chance of coming back. He's off doing his own thing, so they have an excuse to not bring him back, but he is a classic ninja. Again, excuse to have more costumes with one character model that they can recycle across multiple characters and sell separately. Tremor, while he is a classic ninja... Oh, well, if they bring in the Black Dragon, I think Tremor's got a decent shot of making it in as Kano's main enforcer. What they do with Cabal is hard to say, but Kano's basically guaranteed to come in, so there's a decent shot of these two coming in as his guys. Aaron, I don't think we'll get all three. That would be a bit much, unless a big part of the story is this. Like, I could see them making it in his DLC. I could imagine that they do an expansion that's about the Earthrealm Underworld, and that's where Kano gets to have his big moment, and then that's where we bring in a bunch of Black Dragon characters as DLC in Combat Pack 1 and 2, for the expansion, and that's where we'll get these in, but one will probably join him in the main story. Which one? It depends on what they want. Do they need like a rushdown character? Do they want to have a shooty character? Probably not Tremor, because Jax does the ground pound stuff, so probably less likely, but I think one of these will make it in, then the other two, or one or two will make it in as DLC. And then Nightwolf, an odd place to end on, but he has a really good shot of making it in because he got a huge bump in his relevance through Aftermath. You know, people really like this character now, and maybe they'll make that ship, the Windwolf ship, real if Fujin is in fact Raiden's sister. And then people will get mad and say, no, we wanted the gay version. You don't understand. But yeah, so I think this... I imagine a lot of people would probably view this along similar lines of these are the characters who are likely to make it. And I probably should have reiterated this at the start because people will get mad about it. This is not the characters I want to come back, it's the ones I think are likely to come back. I don't really give a shit whether Kano comes back in the next game, or Jax even. I want Sonya just to see what her relationship with Johnny would be, you know, see if they can do that differently, because that was one of the better dynamics in the last trilogy. But don't get mad at me going, oh, this character should make it in, how can you not put it? It's because it's what I think is likely. The only real note at the end is, one of these two, I just don't feel comfortable putting them in guaranteed, because unlike the two Scorpions, who we're going to get both for sure, I don't think either of these is for sure going to get in. I think they'll pick one and just leave it at that. So that's my list, what do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think Hydro has a really good chance of making it into the next one? Or do you think, actually, you're wrong, Nitara is guaranteed to come back because Megan Fox's voice acting career is really kicking off after the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie? Let me know. Have a happy new year. And again, please watch the Fire Emblem video because I'm putting a lot of work into it like I normally do, but it's going to bomb. And, you know, if you like this, help that video to not die as harshly as the last couple. I mean, this is going to be a shorter one compared to the last couple, so, you know, I'm basically covering one less year each time, so please watch it. Bye.